Our guest today, he calls himself a recovered businessman. He's a former LifeSpring trainer. He's a member of the Transformational Leadership Council. He has been a trainer with the reach over 200,000 people across 94 countries. Thank you, Terry, for being here.
Certainly.
So Terry, you've been dedicating your life to service, spiritual exploration, personal growth. One of the questions I want to ask you right off the bat is, you call yourself a recovered businessman. Can you share a little bit more about how you made that shift from someone who lived a fast-paced, high power, all about achievement type of lifestyle to, something a little bit, in the pursuit of joy and curiosity and service? How did you make that shift?
Well, that kind of summarizes how did I make it? I wouldn't say gracefully or easily, but I did it. I had my grandfather and father were civic leaders, businessmen, you'd say successful by objective standards. And I was the only male, last male in my family, and kind of expected to follow their leadership, go into business. So right out of college, I did. I started an entrepreneur, type A workaholic, 6 different businesses, grew them, had the trappings of success, and felt miserable. And I thought, what's wrong? I mean, I was a happy kid and I'm not happy now. And I'm doing everything I thought I was supposed to do. And it's doesn't have it for me. And I'll try to shorten the story, but it's part of it because people have told me they see parallels in my story to theirs. I made it through, and the high-end clients I often work with are looking for, how do I get out, or how do I change this, or how do I, how can I have some more joy? Anyway, a salesman that called on me once a week for my display advertising manager, just ads in the local newspaper, would come into my office, and we'd organize the next campaign or next ad or whatever. And one day he came in just bouncing off the walls, and Terry, I did this thing. You got to do it. You go, oh, man. I said, Charlie, sit down. We got work to do. And I said, Terry, you got to do this. And, this went on for, God, 6, 8 months. And finally, Charlie came in one day with a woman, and he said, Terry, this is the president of the LifeSpring Foundation. She'd like to invite you to dinner. Well, that flattered me. I went to dinner. We had a nice time. I invited me up to our house afterwards for after dinner drinks. And she said, I want to offer you a scholarship to our training, and flattered me once again. And I didn't know how to say no back then. So I took what was a LifeSpring training. Now, this is 1976. Experiential learning, large group experiential learning, self-development, personal growth. I had never been exposed to any of that. And I had a really good experience. I wouldn't say it was life-changing yet, but it was like, this is good. And I wasn't, they had a series of seminars, and I wasn't going to take their next seminar, but my wife decided she wanted to. And so I signed up. And that changed my life because I had experiences I could not explain. I was reading people's minds. I was seeing through solid objects. I found a missing person. I found a woman's birth mother. She had been looking for about 12 years without success. This all happened in a few days. And it was just, and I couldn't deny it. It was my experience. But, I'm a left brain, straight A student having these mystical experiences. And so I got involved with LifeSpring as a volunteer. They ended up recruiting me, and I ended up going to work for them, closing all my companies and going to work for them for less money than my mortgage payment. And it was completely irrational. It made no sense at all. That was 1977, and it's the best choice I've ever made in my life.
With Paul. Yeah, if you don't mind, Paul. Yeah, you just went from, I'll run 6 company. You said dinner seminar, then I have all of a sudden these like super human powers that are explainable logically, scientifically. And then I quit my job. I worked for them, and that was that, right? So now that can think, oh God, spiritual or importance. So like going back into those powerful moments or superhuman powers that's unexplainable. What was it like for you to experience that first time, and how did you what was going through your head, Aaron, when you started to realize like a few things were that wasn't explainable by rational rules like
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, this is a lot of years ago.
Again.
Um, it's like my heart opened up. The world I lived in was very mental, and as most of the people I was around, the business people, and all of a sudden, it's like I discovered a part of my consciousness that had been dormant, you know, and it was very expansive, and it was a lot more attractive to me and desirable than living up in my brain, than being logical, rational, and strategic, and and negotiating, and looking at objective results. And I started having subjective, inner experiences that were a lot more desirable to me. But and I knew that, okay, I got to pursue this. That said, it wasn't all easy. The community, I was I hate to say a big fish in a small pond. I was in Eugene, Oregon. My businesses were in Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. And I was starting to become prominent. I was president of the Rotary Club. I was doing civic service and stuff. And so to leave that wasn't easy, but I knew I needed to. It was like you'd say a call. I had a call that I knew that I couldn't not do it. And yet, um, my family, my business associates, I had a partner in one of the businesses that all of them were thinking I had jumped. You know, maybe you need a break, Terry. I'm throwing away your life. Are you sure you really want to do this? Are you, So there, it was. Anybody who's done this would tell something similar. I started writing a book about 10 years ago called The Call, and I interviewed 74 people who were living lives of purpose, meaning, contribution. And did you receive a call? Tell me the story. What were the challenges? How did you overcome them? And I heard something similar in every case. And often they would say what I just said. I couldn't not do it. I had a lot of resistance in my community, people judging me, uh, you know, and how do you overcome that? I don't have a magic answer or the pill or something. It's just, you just do it.
People use the render.
You
Does it?
surrender will get,
Like that was the common thing you heard.
yes, there would be a good word. You let go of it. You just, for me, it was a process of coming present. Like right now, I can't not do it. Right now, I got to do this. Right now, I got to close this business. Right now, I got to make, the call in that direction. And it was, a whole lot of left foot, right foot. Um, and I would have to say, part of me, I don't know if I went unconscious. It's like I put my conscious mind on hold. Um, because it made no sense. It was not rational. It made no sense, but it's like some part of me, I got to do it, and I'm willing.
So quick question there. All right. I mean, by the way, I appreciate the clarity of your articulation, because many of the people who are listening to this, the Noble Warrior podcast, who are going through that transition, who may be very accomplished in the material business world, who are making the shift into something that's a little bit more internal, that's more focusing on joy, less about quote unquote accomplishment, more about service, right? The greater process, the passion, like all the things you mentioned.
Mhm.
When they're facing one, the internal resistance, what is this? It doesn't make any sense rationally, right? And also the external resistance, the wife, the business partner, and the friends questioning their sanity, like, hey, you're maybe just near vacation. You don't sell your stuff yet, or you don't need to move all the way so away from your existing business community, blah, blah, blah. Like all these things questioning that. So everything that you talk about is very poignant to this podcast. So the follow-up question I wanted to ask you is the faith, because, faith is believing something, not having clear evidence yet, right? So how did you as well as the 74 people they interviewed navigate the faith component? Faith in themselves, faith in their own power, faith in their moral, faith in trusting the call, any insight there?
At the time, I don't believe I was aware that it was faith. Looking back, yeah, but it was, that part was unconscious. I had this is really hard to do alone, and I would say even a little stupid to try to do this kind of change alone. And I didn't know it. I had none of the people in my business community I was around and associates and such. I didn't feel like I could talk with them about it. This was too far away from the world we lived in. But I did meet a couple people in this new world, the human potential movement, who saw something in me I didn't see in myself yet, and who encouraged me. And for whatever reason, I listened to them. I trusted them. Like I was, I got very intrigued with this LifeSpring training, and so I started enrolling people in it. The mailman, the grocery store clerker. I mean, I talked to a lot of people. I was someone pretty enthusiastic, and so I helped build the first one of these seminars in Eugene, Oregon, and I bet I put 60% of the people in the training that were there. And then I was a volunteer assistant, and the trainer came. It was one of the people who saw something in me I didn't see. And he's become a good friend. I'm forever indebted to him. I mean, but he came back about the third day of the training, handed me an envelope, and he said, "Here, use this and go talk to Hanley." And I said, "Who's Hanley?" Now, this is where faith probably came in that I didn't call faith. I said, "Who's Hanley?" And he said, "He's the president of LifeSpring." I said, "Why should I talk to him?" He said, "Talk to him about working for us." And I said, "Russ, I don't need a job. I got a job, and I'm bigger than LifeSpring. I don't." Something inside of me said, "I haven't had a vacation in 10 years." Their headquarters were down in San Rafael near San Francisco. I love San Francisco. I thought, well, I'll take a few days and call it a holiday. So I flew down to San Francisco. I met with Hanley. That story I won't go into unless you want it, but it was unlike anything I ever seen, that experience.
I mean, with that statement, you have to go into it now.
We're leaving it. Oh, okay, well, thing is unreasonable, but I'm thinking I'll just get a break here. That's what I'm telling myself. But some part of me was really, like was already kind of in, like maybe there's something good here. Anyway, I flew down there. I'm on the plane, and one of the things that I learned in LifeSpring, they call it a workshop, but it's a technique for getting into an alpha state, and it's the best learning state and creative and stuff. And so, and I was an insomniac. I had bleeding ulcers. I was worried, and this technique for the first time in my life, like in 10 years, I started to relax, and I was sleeping at night. So I'm sitting on the plane. I go into this alpha state. Someone taps me on the shoulder. And he said, "Hi, my name's John. What's yours?" And I said, "Terry." And he said, "I saw you sitting up here. Are you by any chance involved with LifeSpring?" I'd never met the guy. And I said, "Well, not." I'd taken their training. And he said, "Well, where are you going?" And I said, "Down to San Francisco." That's where the flight was going. He said, "Are you going to San Rafael?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "So am I." He said, "Are you by any chance going to talk to Hanley?" He said, "So am I." So he was somebody else going down to meet. So, it's like, how did that happen? Why did he pick me out of the 100 people on the plane on the flight? And how did he know? And, so this kind of mystery and intrigue was starting to go on. And well, I said, "Well, I got to rent a car. I can drive you up to San Rafael." And he said, "No, I got one too." A guy named John Webb. I saw him once more, I think, in my life after then. He ended up going to work for LifeSpring, and so did I. But I walked into the LifeSpring office, and they were having an all-company meeting. At that time, they had like 12 cities active, and had all their city directors and trainers and key people. And so I walk in the door, and the receptionist, 10 feet in front of me said, sh- I, she said, can I help you? And I said, I'm here to meet with Hanley. She said, oh, are you Terry Tillman? Oh, we've been looking forward to meeting you. I mean, it was a very warm greeting. I'm thinking, how the hell do you know who I am? It's like, and she said, John's running a little bit over right now. He's conducting a meeting, and the entire office is full. Um, Let me find you a place you can sit down and wait till he's finished. So she leads me down the hall. We go into a room with no windows, and it's a storage room. It's a supply room. There's a Xerox machine, shelves full of office supplies and training equipment and all this. And she found a folding chair and puts it in the middle. And I sit down there and I wait and I wait and I wait. It's like 20, 30 minutes, and I stick my head out the door. There's no one in the hall. I go back, I sit down some more. I go into my, this alpha state again, kind of like meditating, and I wait some more. And I don't know, God, maybe 50, 60 minutes went by. Finally, the door opens up. This guy sticks his head in the door and he says, so you're Tillman. You have issues with your father. You're popular in your community. You've got money, but you feel broke. You got a beautiful wife and you don't appreciate her very much as she deserves. And it just went down, bam, 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 leaving me. And then he said, did I miss anything? And I'm kind of stunned. And I said, well, that was pretty complete. And he said, okay, good. Thanks. He turns and starts to walk away. He fixes his head back in the door and said, oh, by the way, I'm John Hanley. Nice to meet you. And he turns and he walks away. That was my interview with Hanley.
Um,
And I'm thinking, I came all the way down here for that. What was that about? And so I leave. I'm going to fly back home. And as I'm leaving, the guy the LifeSpring trainer who gave me the tickets, a guy named Russ Bishop, was there standing in the hall. And he said, well, how was your meeting with Hanley? And I told him, and Russ just laughed. And he said, yep, that's Hanley. And I said, what was that about? And he said, I don't know. You'll find out. So I went back home. I went to work. And like maybe 2, 3 weeks later, I get a phone call. And the guy said, Tillman, this is John. I said, oh, yeah, John who? And he said, John Hanley. When do you want to start? And I said, start what? Start working for us. And to me, this is crazy to me. And he said, I'll fly you around to our cities. You can meet our city directors and decide which city you want to start in. And I was thinking, start what? That was about it. And so I thought, well, why not? So I flew around. I wasn't interested in the East Coast. So I went to San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Vancouver. Long story short, that's when I decided I'm going to do this. And I closed my companies. I didn't sell them. I closed them. I had one of them was real estate development and construction. So I had a lot of property. It took me another 10 years to sell everything, but basically I stopped doing business and I moved to Seattle, Washington. And the city director there ended up becoming one of my best friends, one of my best mentors. And I found out that I could do this. Like the first week I was in Seattle, they had me in front of a group doing a 3-hour seminar and no training or anything. I could just do it. And I've been doing it ever since, and a lot more less detail to it, but
right then. What a story, man. Oh, thank you for sharing. That was entertaining and
really, okay.
but incredible, obviously, because, you use words like life changing and best friends and like all of these things, right? You, without a doubt, this, you said it, this was one of the best decisions that you made. In hindsight, maybe not at the moment, but in hindsight, that was, the thing that shaped your life, right? So the question I have for you is, I think you were very fortunate that you essentially tap into flow right away, right? You used kind of like the Taoist concept a little bit. You tap into the way, the Tao right away, hit the ground running, you could do this was effortless effort. What are you cautious about? What are the metrics, so to speak, of like, this is, I'm trusting this, and these are all positive signs, the synchronicity, the positive signs, and I am doing the right thing. consciously or unconscious?
I would say semi-conscious. It's more like I entered a different consciousness. I mean, it really was a transformation. I was aware of the old me, but the old me wasn't the real me. And it's like I had stepped into who I essentially was. And but there was a dichotomy. It's like, it wasn't like that, but it was, I knew I had to lean this way and see where it went. And, and as long as I did that, these wonderful things kept happening. I was enjoying it, like the first seminar I did. I mean, Kara Barker was the city director, who was also probably the most versatile and talented trainer, facilitator. She's now a Jungian psychologist, but she was brilliant. And she took me under her wing. And she was one who saw something in me I didn't see. And so, first week I'm there, she's conducting one of their advanced seminars. And she said, "Come in and do this with me." I said, I don't know how to do this. I've just been a student. And she said, "Well, sit up in front with me and let's see what you do." And I said, "Okay." All right. And so, she's working, we would do experiential exercises, and then there'd be we called it processing, but afterwards, you'd work with the people. And she would she would see things like, "How do you know that?" I'd wonder, "How do you know that?" And during a break, I said, "How do you know that? How didn't you know that this person was that way, or that was the right question? How'd you know?" And she said, "Well, you take the next person, you do it." And I said, "I don't know how to do it." And she said, "Just do it." And I said, "Well, do what?" And she said, "Well, look in you, not at them. What do you see in you?" And I said,
Can you pause? I remember saying that. Say that again.
"This is Kara Barker, who's the
Yeah.
trainer, who's ended up training me initially." Right. And we're in front of the room in a seminar, advanced seminar. And I'm just sitting there feeling dumb. But anyway, she said, "You take the next person." And I said, "Do what?" And so she said, "Well, I said, "I don't know what to do." And she said, "Well, figure it out. Look inside of you and it'll tell you what to do."
I see.
Whatever you see out there, if you didn't have it in you, you wouldn't see it. You wouldn't know it. Look in here, not out there. That was one of the first big lessons. And so she said, "You work with this guy." So I looked inside and something showed up and I asked a question and I could just do it.
And now, here's a question. Were you already pretty self-aware so you can see the different aspects of yourself and sense it and understand it? Or were you still very logical and data-driven and all this?
Another good question. At the time, no, I wasn't. But if I look back on my life, like, I had a really wonderful mother who was open to new stuff. And she told me one time about a book. There was a best-selling book, and this is probably in the 50s, called, I don't remember the whole title, but it was about Bridie Murphy. Bridie Murphy was working with a psychiatrist who regressed her back to a past life. Now, they didn't use the word past life. They might have thought it was ancestral or something. And the story was about this girl, as I remember, late teenage, who was recalling experiences in Ireland. And she had never been out of the United States or the city she was in. And the psychiatrist, she was describing events, things from history, like 100 years previously. The psychiatrist went back to see if there was any truth in what the girl was recalling. Well, there was. It was like a gravestone with a proper date on it and, names of people and scenes and house descriptions and stuff. And so, it was recalling a past life. So my mom told me about this, and me and my best friend decided it was hypnotic past life regression. So my best friend and I decided, well, let's see if we can hypnotize each other.
How old are you?
8, maybe.
Oh,
And so we watched change. I'd lie down and Jack would twirl it above my eyes. And you're going deeper and deeper. And, I'd go, and then and we pretended like we were doing Bridie Murphy, And we thought we were making stuff up. Then I'd do it with Jack, you're going deeper and deeper. And, and then we had a few of our friends in the neighborhood. And then some of the parents heard we were doing this and stopped us, like this great thing. So fast forward, I'm in fourth grade. How old's that? 10 years old. And we're studying the continents. And so we had to go, in these days, there's no internet. It was, you go to the encyclopedia or look it up and take notes. Well, we had to go pick a continent and come back and report on it. So the continent I picked was Atlantis. Have you heard of the lost continent of Atlantis?
Of course.
So I write up a report on it. I didn't know where I found information, but it was hocus pocus, woo woo. Back nobody believed there was really Atlantis. So I did my report on Atlantis, and the teacher said, "Where'd you get that nonsense?" So then, and looking back, I realized I had quite a few experiences like this where my awareness, my interest, my curiosity was into this tail of the bell curve, more mystical stuff. And, then I got into Stanford, and the first day after registering for classes, I walked out of the registration hall, and there's all these extracurricular booths, the band, the volunteer firemen, the newspaper. And I made a beeline right for a booth that was Zen Buddhism. And they had materials, and I grabbed them. And then I was invited to dinner. One of the professors had been a professor at the University of Oregon in Eugene, where I grew up, and his son was a good friend of mine. And so his son got into Stanford too, and invited me to dinner at their house. This is my first day of college. So I go to Professor Wright's house for dinner, and he says, "Well, how did you like your first day at Stanford?" I said, "Oh, this is going to be great. There's all this stuff and this Zen Buddhism and there." And he said, "Oh, don't get into that, Terry." He said, "That'll get on your record and you'll never get a job." We count all their experiences where my nature wanted to go metaphysical and mystical. And yet the adults were, I remember my imaginary playmates when I was a kid playing out in the garden. And I heard the bells say, "Nearly cool, we can see seed sounds." For the adults, all these steps along the way are communicating a message. This isn't okay. But looking back, this was more my nature. And somehow that began to surface, and I let that direct me instead of this, the head.
A few friends of mine were discussing about educational initiatives. He's in his 30s, I'm in my 40s, they have 4 kids. We're discussing how they can, use some of the resources they now accumulated to, revitalize, rethink our education system. Let's start with the kids as things, so to speak, and then see what we can learn, and then hopefully find something new. Then we can, extrapolate that and share with some people in our lives, basically, right? So that's kind of the whole premise of that whole discussion, which led me to, some basic skills that I believe that my kids to learn. You're a father, you're a grandfather, and you are a student and teacher of transformation trainings, knowing what you know today at 81 years old, right?
82 now.
Oh, congratulations. 82, excuse me. Right, it's good and never know. And you look amazing. The 82, knowing what you know today as an elder, beginning in age and experience, what would you say some of the top skills that you wish that were taught in our school system to help kids?
I don't know who your audience is, but I'm going to speak. It doesn't matter. So if this is a business community I'm talking to, and most of my work in subsequent years, maybe we'll talk about that, has gotten into, I got a name for this leadership trainings in businesses. This metaphysical aspect is why I can do what I've done. I would say I'm at the top of my field in leadership training, but I didn't do it the way most people do it. And I wouldn't have been able to do it or get the results I got had I not gotten into this kind of work. So what were the skills? Um, if I were teaching kids, I
You
would
have grandkids, right? So what kind of skills were more
right. I have a 9-year-old son. I have a granddaughter who's 22.
amazing? Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would teach them how to get into the alpha state, the best possible learning state. You know, if it's, and I teach this, I've been teaching meditation with my business clients for almost 40 years, but I couldn't call it meditation. It wasn't acceptable 20 years ago. You know, they probably wouldn't have let me in the door. So I call it a stress reduction technique. If I were teaching it to kids, a learning technique, but it's the alpha state at least, or deeper, but it's the best possible learning state. And if I would have learned that, I mean, it's why young kids pick up things so quick. They can go in that. I mean, I watch my son and my God, he learns fast and easily. And I don't want to interrupt that, how he already knows how to do it innately. You know, as we grow and learn and start mentalizing, get more uh, brain mind, our mind is bigger than what's between our skull. And we start to lose, and I could go into the theory and what happened, but you know, so if I were teaching kids, that's one of the first things. The other thing I'd teach kids, I would teach them about karma. Because if you understand karma, you make very different and more wise choices. Hmm. Or the idea that you know, it could be Newtonian physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. No, it's the balancing. It's choice and consequence. You know, every choice you make puts in motion an energy that's going to return to you, and so you want the return to be good, positive, enjoyable, not negative. So if you understood that, if kids understood that, they would make different. The world would be a different place, and you got to start with the children. You know, if we wouldn't be at war, why? Because it would only hurt me. I'm selfish. I don't want to hurt myself. You know, if I really understood karma, you know, if I hurt someone else, it's going to come back on me in some way I don't want. Now, this is, you know, nobody in my schooling, and I went to Stanford, supposedly one of the best schools in the world. I didn't learn what would have been most useful to me. Yeah. You know, I would teach more of the personal skills. Now, anybody can learn. I can learn how to do accounting. I can learn how to keep a set of books. I can learn how to code. I took computer classes back in the 60s where it's punch card input. So in other words, I can learn skills. I mean, external skills. I can learn how to paint a house or frame a house, or, you know, or code, or, you know, whatever skills are needed. Like, but can I learn the consciousness that's going to produce a productive life of contribution and meaning and purpose and happiness? Those are all inner stuff, inner things. So I would, you know, put a big focus on that. I mean, I don't mean this arrogant, but I believe I could do anything. Why? Because anybody can. And how can I say that? Well, I've had experiences I can't explain rationally, but I stepped into it and it happened. You know, I don't remember how much we talked, but I was paralyzed from my waist down. 2 orthopedic surgeons told me I'd never walk again. One of them said I needed surgery immediately. My only thought was, well, then you can't help me. And I set out to heal myself, and I did. Right now, the biggest thing on my plate right now, and will this happen? I don't know, but I want to make a movie. Have I ever made a movie? No. Do I have any background in it? Not really. My daughter's a costume designer and son-in-law is a cinematographer, but other than that, not really. But I don't have any doubt I can do it. Why? I know how to put together an all-star team, organizing them and get them focused on the result. I'm confident in what I can do. Now, I'm skilled at that, and that applies to any project. So maybe your skill is, you know, whatever, coding a program. You can apply that. It's holographic. You can apply it anywhere. if you learn how to do it. It's not hard. Uh, well, it's simple, but sometimes it's hard. Right?
I think one of the biggest challenge, the difficulty, the challenge, the hardness of it is not the material itself, the content, the topic itself. Often, I'll speak on very personal. Most of the challenges step out of the way, the internal resistance, the laziness, the procrastinations that I don't want to, once I can get that out of the way, the imposter syndrome out of the way, then the learning part, the execution part, at least for me, is so much easier.
Yeah, I still deal with procrastination and doubt, and I don't think my age is an age, a number. It's a stage. This stage, my biggest challenge has been there, done that.
Right.
Have ambition.
Mm.
I'm energetic, and I still involved in work, but it isn't like it used to be. So some of those, there's never an end to the challenge. The adversity or whatever. You've probably heard the term comfort zone, right?
Mhm.
So I'm the guy who developed the comfort zone model that people in this field or a lot of fields use. Now, I didn't come up with the term, but the design of it and the way it's presented, um, I'm told I did. Do I know everybody? This is back in the 70s. Do I know anybody else who was saying this? I don't know. But I know I was early, and it's the model I use it constantly. And the work I do is to get to somebody to the edge of their comfort zone. And how do I know where the edge is? The resistance shows up. It could be an explanation, a logic, an excuse. It could be a feeling, fear, or it could be an emotion. It could be a sickness. It could be I know how to I know how to get somebody to their resistance and through it. And when they're resisting, to me, that's a good sign. You know. So doubt, for example, is an expression of resistance. Procrastination is an expression of resistance. So I consciously do things to get the people to there.
So actually, on that note, Terry, let me ask you a quick question.
Mhm.
My relationship with this internal resistance in the beginning, part of this is bad, it's wrong, I don't like it, right? So like ignore, deny, reject this, stay away, escape as quickly as I can, right? And over the years, through martial arts, inspirational studies, I learned to lean into it more. Oh, pain is a weakness leading my body to this other more interest, right? Or release, right? Like, acute stress is good for us, cultivate our capacity, mental, physical, all these, right? But nonetheless, I'm human. I'll again make myself the teaching mechanism here. I still don't like thrive in it. I still get like poke at me, like, hey, here's your blind spot. My immediate reaction is embarrassment. My immediate reaction is fuck, I got caught. I hope this is aspirational. I hope I can get to a place where I'm like, this is great. I've even, Terry felt something where I didn't see this is amazing, like the positive, reaction to that. I'm curious, as someone who invented this model, what's your relationship when somebody pointed out, hey, here's the thing that you haven't looked at. Here's the thing you're bullshitting yourself. Here's an area that's, maybe there's a little bit of self-deception. Like, look over here. How do you relate to that?
Yeah. No, there's something innate in nature that wants to be right or avoid being wrong. Now, some of it I think is genetic or ancestral or how, but part of it's learned and taught, and it's our experience going through the educational system in the developed world. It's in the same. I've been in 101 countries, probably worked in 50 of them, and in some cultures this isn't true. But like when we went through school, so let's say we'd hand in a paper and the paper was returned to it. What was on that paper?
Marks, like,
Red mark pointing at everything you did wrong.
that's right.
Yeah. So what did we learn? Unconsciously, and that's painful to a young kid, like I want to be loved. What's wrong with me? I don't want that experience of making a mistake or being wrong. I want to be right. I had, many of us had parents who intended well, but the way they went about it is they also brought our awareness to the pain of being wrong, making a mistake. I had a really critical father, and he was I now look at him, he's a wonderful man, and he did a great job, but he was the most critical person I'd ever been around. Could never do anything good enough. And I did a lot of good things. I was a good athlete. I was a straight A student. And it was never good enough. I remember, I literally straight A's except one B in history in high school. And the only time he ever commented on my grades was, how come you got a B in history? Well, that was painful to the 16-year-old me, or whatever age it was. But an accumulation of these, and this is not an uncommon story, going through our educational process, our childhood learning. And so we don't want the pain of making a mistake. Looking back, I got into the work I did for most of my life, trying to heal that. And I did. So I know it's possible. How do you do it? Well, my method is experiential learning. But what you've said, what you just told me, that, the work I've done is originally was called awareness training. Well, it's much more than that now. But simple awareness is often curative. I think it was Fritz Perls that said that. But anyway, it's just taking it from the unconscious to the conscious is sometimes enough to clear it. It's at least enough to get it to the point where now you can learn and clear it and balance it and get it the way you want. You can make more conscious choices. And so the awareness, just the fact that you've described your process, is a major step toward moving past it.
Awareness is a step to do anything, right? And now I am not aware, then the thing runs me. But if I'm aware of it, at least I have a chance and probability of having some sovereignty and agency around making an effort to navigate that space.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. This, I don't remember who your audience is or all of that, but
I'd say, let me just do a quick pause. My audience is people like me, or the younger version of me, the hyperachievers, who are very cerebral, very motivated, wanted to seek to have a life of a greater joy, greater purpose, greater spiritual connection, right? So that's,
do they use that term spiritual?
do they use the word spiritual? And they are awakening to that. For example, the younger
Like speak to each other, amongst each other about that?
So like I think it's like a spectrum, right? So they may not phrase it in the beginning part of their journey, but through listening to conversations like this, from working here with me, they're now more and more open to understanding the subtlety, the nuances of what it is that we're discussing. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I see that as a very positive sign. In my generation, it was whispered, like, you would be excommunicated if, like, the business community I was in knew that there was any interest in this direction. Great. Now, it's not that way now. I mean, the business people I work with now, we can have these conversations more and more. So to me, that's a positive sign, because this is the foundation of it. Like, here's, this shows up all the time in my work, but people want to be successful. But you know what they haven't done? They haven't taken the time to find out, how am I measuring success? they've assumed somebody else's measurement. They've assumed, the companies, the businesses, the culture's measurement, which is usually something external and often uh, material dollars, a house, corner office, right clothes, the right relationship for husband or wife or something. And that'll never fulfill you. It just won't. And once you step into that, it's harder and harder to break free of it. So if you could go in, this doesn't mean you're not going to have a job or a business or you're going to produce in the world. That's where we are, a physical world. But if you can do it from the inside out instead of the outside in, you'll find it works better. Mm. So, a lot of the work I do with, I didn't want to be identified as a coach, but I have individual clients sometimes. And this is one of the first things we look at, what do you really want? Who are you? Why are you here? What really matters? Like, and it always goes into like the measurement is subjective. It's internal. It's not external. It won't a little honest. And I just want more peace of mind. I want more loving. I want more happiness. I want more laughter. I want more ease. Uh, what do you do with all that money you're earning? Well, then I'll travel. What do you want out of the travel? Well, I want to learn. Okay, where does the learning happen? Inside. All right. Can you do that without the travel? Yeah, but I want to travel. Okay. How could you travel? Well, I got to make some money to pay for it. Do you? I've traveled the world over. I didn't make the money so then I can spend it on traveling. I went into a field that took me around the world and I got to travel and somebody else paid for it. Now, if I would have strategized it that way in the beginning, well, first of all, I don't know if I could have. I could have said, let me go do these, let me go become a trainer, which is what we were called in the beginning, or a consultant or whatever. Let me go do that so I can see the world. I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like, I love this. I'm curious. I want to learn more about it. There's amazing people I'm learning from who they're seminal workers. Now I'm called a seminal worker. But in the beginning, it was just, I dove into it and then it went someplace. So I think the teaching is follow your heart. Be true to yourself. And that's the fraternal.
So Terry, I'm gonna share something. It's a gentle pushback, right? This is something that's common. I hear people say as well. So maybe you can provide some nuances here since you've been in fear for so long. So I was talking to another notable teacher who's been doing this type of transformational work, an author. And one of the things that he consistently say is, I know I'm making a huge impact, in people's lives through my books, my training, all these things, coaching. And I know that I'm recognized in my industry or well respected. People will listen to me, all these things. But one of the things we don't usually have conversations, but when we do, he would inevitably slip in, I wish I'd make more money or some variation of it. So I'm curious to know, from your angle, being this saying what you said just now, what would you say to that man who has huge impact, unquestionable, to people's lives? Nonetheless, there's maybe some wounding, some unfulfilled desires to make more money.
I would say a couple things. I would say, keep going. You're not there yet. And I would also say, how much is enough? He doesn't know what he really wants yet. It's what I was saying about how do you measure success? He hasn't gotten there yet. So keep going, Success isn't more money.
Yeah.
Worked, this is my story. I was a wealthy young man. I stopped working for money at age 35. I thought I had enough to never have to worry about money again. 2 divorces later, investment manager that took over my finances, went through a Madoff type experience. Yeah, I mean, I had well, I lost most of what I had. And that was another school, but the process was what I know about. I learned detachment, which is freedom. I'm free. All the things I used to worry about and think I needed, I don't anymore. Now, how did that happen? It happened with me with going through those losses. 2 divorces. I gave away 6 houses. I could go on and on about detaching from the material world. Am I going to tell people do this, do it the way I did it? No. But I am going to say that at some point, you're going to have to learn how you measure success. What's your true measurement? And the resistance gets so high at this point. Like the work I'm doing with, I've had a fascination with the number 12 for quite a long time. And I run, and I was out running one day and I heard this voice that said, get 12 people together for 12 weeks, $1,200, start on October 12th, which is my birthday. Da, 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 da. It came out of nowhere. My brain said, I don't have time for that. And that's not funny. And that would take a lot of, I did grow. Yeah. Put it into something that pays better. But it was the voice that just led me in good places. And I said, okay, I'll do it. So, but I didn't what am I going to do for 12 weeks? I didn't. So I call it spirit directed. And I'm working with a group right now. We're starting our 3rd session next week. And I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And I will when I get, but it's the advanced course. And it's where I want to work with people now. And I'm finding people like I can talk to you about it. I know a part of you kind of leans this direction. Part of what's showing up, I'm maybe a chapter ahead of these people. Like I'm still learning too. But one of the things that I'm working with them and myself is synchronicity. And it's a language and learning that language. And it's like learning a language. And, one of my favorite quotes is out of the Course in Miracles. God speaks to us all a little differently, hoping we'll tell each other. Okay. Synchronicity is the way I'm being spoken to by something bigger than me. And it's fascinating. I mean, it's just, and so I've got the group, start becoming, and synchronicity is these occurrences that are beyond probability of coincidence. It's way past coincidence. And they start showing up. Okay, for example, what's showing up for me a lot, I just did right now. It's 11 a.m. I just looked. 1 series of ones are showing up everywhere for me. That is not a coincidence. Now it's 11:01. If I look at the clock on my MacBook, this is I was a few days ago. I'm driving down Olympic Boulevard here in Los Angeles. I'm at a stoplight. I looked to my left. Here's a building with the address 11111. So I took a picture of it. I could go on and on. It's just yesterday I'm talking to somebody, and it's another group online, and they know about my 12 group, and we're interacting. And one guy said, "I can interrupt you right now, Terry. Do you notice how many people are in this group?" And it was a group that fluctuates. It can be 8 people. It could be 20. There's 12. And then another guy in the group says, "Do you know what time it is? It's 11:11." So I can go on. This just, okay, what's it telling me? It's a language. What's it saying to me? So how do you get the answer? Well, I go inside. What do I get intuitively? You might call it intuitively or innately or something, or hunched, or without censoring. What does it say? Okay, 1. Well, that's what? That's the beginning. Okay, it's something about a beginning. Oh, there's lots of beginnings. Oh, it's new beginning. That's the language. Okay, so I got that far. Okay, new beginnings. All right. The first, it's going to be a good new beginning. It's, not, am I making this up? So then I go online and I went to Chat GPT and I said, what can you tell me about a series of ones? And the first thing it says is new beginnings. Oh, there's some validation. I'm learning the language. right? What if I make my choices this way? Exclusively? No, no, not exclusively. But what if I bring that into my process when I have a decision or a choice or a question? Now, this is way beyond the law of attraction, but this is, so I know I'm on to something. I mean, does this make any sense? Do you know what I'm
Oh,
saying?
for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I came from the world of biomedical engineering, PhD, UCLA. You know, if I can measure it, if I can duplicate it, it doesn't exist, right? Then I have my own series of studies. Fast forward to today, I do pay attention to synchronicity quite a bit because I've experienced so many of them. I'm explaining, not logical, improbable.
Yes.
You know, and happen so often. I'll share a quick story if you don't mind. I was at a Tony Robbins event. He had us, you know, as you may or may not have participated in parties, seminars, you know, really activated physical energy, you know, mental energy. And then that's sort of his shtick, right? That's the activation process that he has his participants do. And one of the exercises, activate the energy, take a word out of the ethers, any word at all, and declare it to the universe. And then sit down and then watch what happens on the next 3 days. Okay. At the time was the beginning part of my journey, shall we say. Didn't think much of it. The day after, I went to go pick up my brother from the train station. He was doing the men's weekend up there in Oakland, you know, hundreds of miles away. Has no idea what I'm doing in LA. Picked him up on the train, get out of the train. He said, brother, I got a gift for you. And thank you so much for picking me up. You know, when I saw this, I thought of you. He handed me a wooden carving of a word on it. It's the same figure workers.
Yeah.
I'm never big like, what is going on? Is it probable? Is it like maybe? But probability of that word in 44 hours from my brother who had no idea what's going on. What's going on?
There you go. You know, my story earlier about that LifeSpring advanced training, where all of a sudden I'm reading people's minds and finding a birth mother and a missing person, same thing. And that piqued something inside of me enough that, okay, this, I can't deny my experience. This is real and I got to know more about it. You know, what if this is the natural design? I would say it is. We just got disconnected. We got to reconnect. Yeah.
So, Terry, you have been a student and teacher in this field for quite a long time. You're now 2 years old. Congratulations. Keep going. Don't stop. Right. I'm a new fan already. I wanted to zoom out for a second, right? Because you mentioned a few words like landmark and Alice and, you know, LifeSprings and, you know, NLP, you know, bio. I'm curious from your perspective, out of all the modalities that you're seeing in the current state of transformation as a field, as an industry, as a market, right? To help people grow and heal and, you know, actualize their potential. What would you say is perhaps the most effective, right?
Let me say a couple things. First, Tony Robbins did his first firewalks in my leadership training.
Oh, no kidding. That's awesome. I love it.
1980-ish, somewhere in
I
there.
agree.
And I had designed this leadership training, a 3-month course. And I was doing work like the comfort zone I talked about. The boundary of that comfort zone is defined by your belief system, the limiting beliefs. And I was looking for something to demonstrate to people that beliefs are not necessarily true. And most people's beliefs, you know, if I said to you, tell me your belief system, you wouldn't come up with very much because it isn't conscious. You don't think of it as a belief, but it's stuff like right, wrong, always, never, good, bad, can, can't. Those are beliefs. not necessarily true. And I was looking for a way to experientially demonstrate beliefs aren't necessarily true. And I had a way, and it was, yeah, it was adequate, but I wasn't satisfied. And about a week before I was going to do the first version of this leadership training, this guy comes into my office, wildly enthusiastic, saying, "I can show people how to walk on fire, and can I work with you in your seminars?" And I said, "Tell me more about it." And he told me some things, and and I said, "Okay, we'll try it. I'm going to redesign the first weekend, and let's see what I'll give you 3 hours, and I'll be the first one to walk on fire." And there was going to be 55 people in the group. I limited it to that. And if I get hurt, nobody else goes, and it's all by choice. And he said, "Fine." So anyway, that was Tony Robbins, and he was, I think, 19 or 20 years old at the time. And I haven't seen him since. I mean, he did about 3 of them in my seminar, and then I found something better, ropes courses. Uh, so what would be the best? Anybody who starts into self-development, personal growth, whatever you want to call it, if they keep going, they will end up in some form of spiritual study. And that requires a true spiritual teacher. And have you ever heard of a mystery school?
Sure, but is there any specific one?
One here. No, not anyone specific, but when the student's ready, the teacher appears.
Mm.
And that, at some point you'll end up. So there's a number, I don't know the number, how many, 10, 500, I don't know how many mystery schools, but they're out there and they're not advertising or marketing or whatever. What they are what's available there is the most impactful, powerful, important. I think the word used is modality. So yeah, I've all those things you listed. I was in John Grinder's first NLP certification class. I mean, I'm still learning and studying. It's rare now I see anybody that's got something I haven't already experienced. Their language may be different, their packaging may be different, but I want to keep exploring them, and I have, and that all led to this spiritual teaching, eternal truths,
Mm.
that word through millennia. And the teacher I worked with called it practical spirituality. The way I describe it, it's biggest challenge on earth is head in the stars, feet in the ground. How do I keep this spiritual awareness and priority and function here in the mundane? How do I do that? It's immensely challenging. Uh, And the more I become aware spiritually, the less important this stuff in the world is to me, but I still got to work it. It's very challenging. But nothing else is, at some point, there's nothing else is rewarding. And it's a process. I've asked, the people I work with, I mean, I started working with people. I think, if I ask a group of people, how many of you would like to know your purpose in life? And it's almost 100% of the hands will go up. And so I started working with that. How do you know your purpose? And that I do that. Well, even beyond that, it's looking for an answer to who am I and why am I here? And it's amazing how many people have had that query at some point in their life. I mean, I guess it's 100%, but if I ask a group of people, 90% will say yes. I've wondered. Well, those are important questions. Who am I and why am I here? What's it really about? And until you've answered that, you will not have your fullest life available to you, however that's measured. So you got to connect with that at some point somehow, if you really want all that's available. And so to me, that's the beginning. You got to start there. Not how do I become a better accountant? I may discover accounting's not my forte. But on the other hand, if I by entrepreneuring 6 businesses, I learned that's not me. I had to go through that. I mean, that
So,
wasn't
so actually, I want to ask you a quick question about it. To me, information can be gathered, especially now we have the internet, YouTube, Google, with ChatGPT. Information is, available at our fingertips, right? But wisdom is earned. You can buy it, in a book even, right? Even as much as people want to package it that way, to me anyway, wisdom is earned. We have to go through the challenges, face the discomfort, the frustration, right? I got them right here. And if I couldn't go through it, then they realize, oh, what a gift it was, right? But it wasn't until you actually go through it and then I realize what a gift. So I'm curious, as teachers, sometimes the way I feel is I'm sharing some of the fruits, right? The lesson that I got from it with the intent of, hey, you don't have to suffer as more. You don't have to, spin your wheels so much. There is, I don't know, the more effective track to kind of go through it, right? With a lot more grace, a lot more dignity, right? So forth. But then I also think, well, the journey is the journey is the journey. They have to go through the pain, the suffering, maybe the depression, the prolonged period of negativity, or neither critic, the limiting belief, so that, right, they can receive the fruit with that much more gratitude. I'm curious, as a teacher, as a student, you've been thinking about this for a long time. What's your take on what I just shared with you?
Yeah, yeah, you're very aware, CK, and you do, you have good questions and queries, for yourself and anyone else. Yeah, it's am I actually serving anybody, by sharing my wisdom or experience or, awareness or knowledge, am I harming them because I might deny them this experience? Yeah. Well, early on, I realized it's not my job to change, fix, save anybody. But it is part of my personal process, my purpose to share information and experience.
Mhm.
Well, their consideration and what they do with it is up to them. And if they benefit, if it can, they got to go through their own experience. But you don't have to dwell in it forever. If anything that they've heard from you or me can move them through the pain of the experience, and there will be some quicker, well, okay, that's good. Or some people may spend their life in pain, That's not, it's not my judgment to make. In fact, I remember, I mean, it's little things that have caught my attention. When I was conducting a seminar one time, it was in Santa Monica. I remember in the front row, there was a quadriplegic, a woman in a wheelchair. She always had to be in the front row, right on the aisle, because she would wheel her up in her wheelchair. Couldn't move her arms or leg. It was a little lever she moved with her mouth and her head movement. And I was working with her and the challenge that she had in her life. Well, you'd look at her and say, my God, what a challenge. I don't know if I could handle that. And a couple hours later, I'm working with a guy, like 4 rows down, whose mother said, "You're stupid," when he was 6 years old. And I realized inside of him, that is as challenging, as painful as that quadriplegic.
Mhm.
There's no difference
And
to
yeah,
that person.
yeah.
And it's not mine to judge or change it or fix it or save it or anything. But if I can offer, even if it's a moment of of possibility or pleasure or positivity, even if it's just, a moment, okay, I feel good about that. Right. Beyond that, not my business.
And
Now, beyond that, this is the biggest reward of the work I've done. I hear back from people decades later, even fairly frequently, if and someone I hadn't seen or talked to or even remembered. Um, yeah, well, here, well, yeah, okay, I'll say this. So I want to make this movie. Can I make a movie? Yeah, I can. Um, it's a movie about a book that was super important to me in my transition. I mean, it was the catalyst for me to close those businesses. A book called Illusions, Richard Bach. And it was fiction, semi-autobiographical about Bach, who's a pilot, author. But I didn't read it as fiction. I read it as this is true and I want to know about it. I want to even meet the people who could even think of this to write it. Well, it's very important. Fast forward maybe 20 years, I meet a guy who has become a friend, who is a writer, producer, director, and I found out he had the movie rights to the movie Illusions. And I'm saying, Barnett, we got to know each other and periodically say, when are you ever going to make that movie? That'd be such a good movie. And this is probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. He said, I don't ever want to make another movie if I've got to get involved in the financing. Maybe the timeline here will be useful to some people. If nothing else, be patient. So, so Barnett, I filed that away. Barnett said, I'd like to see the book made into a movie. And Barnett's got the rights and he's won an Academy Award for a film he made and he's good, and so then I'm in a group called Metal. You're in that, aren't you? Yeah. So a guy in Metal who I'd become acquainted with, had dinner with a few times. We connected. And one day he said, Terry, you've got to meet my best friend. I think you guys would really get along. I said, okay. Well, his best friend owns the LA Center Studios. There's 6 sound stages and 20 acres in downtown Los Angeles. Never heard of it, but it's right in the midst of these high rises. And so we go down there to have lunch in their cafeteria. I'm sitting in the lobby and this guy walks up behind me and he said, oh, my Terry Tillman, so good to see you again. I stand up and I look at him and I don't recognize him. He said, you don't recognize me, do you? I said, I'm sorry, I don't. He said, you did my Inside Seminar Advanced Training. This is like 25 years ago. And he gestures to this facility, this high-rise building and sound studios and all this stuff. And he said, none of this would be here were it not for you. Oh, and I'd say, what did I do? I don't have no memory. And he described something I did in working with him in a seminar. I have no memory of this. So, okay. I love that he shared it with me because that I think, okay, I did something of value to somebody. I mean, that's the real reward. Did I do it at the time thinking I'm going to help this guy become financially successful? No, not at all. In other words, you don't know. It's if I've said to myself more recently, I wish I knew the 80-year-old me back when I was in my 20s and 30s. Could have saved a lot of agony. Oh, if I would have listened. I don't know if that really would have served me. I mean, I'm so grateful for the experiences I've had. It's what created the wisdom I will claim that I may never gain had I not go through those. Now, some of them sucked. I mean, when I lost most of my money, sucked. I mean, one of my divorces, the most painful thing I've ever been through, it sucked. But I learned so much. Yeah, in the process, it turned out to have great value later. I don't even know if I would have known that much going into it. Would it have eased it at all? Would I have learned it faster? I don't know. I probably would have served me hoping there was a positive end at this, like it's going to get better. Maybe that would have served me. Yeah. So I don't know if I have a good answer to your question.
Well, I think the through line here, Terry, ultimately is trust.
Yeah.
The trust our own experience, however painful, however pleasant, however joyous, however purposeful, however successful, however not successful. Everything we're going to turn out as well. This is my own teachings. Right? We have 2 things that we can have control over life. Only 2 things: our effort and our response. Everything else, it's out of my control. It's ultimately God. Right? So, and I think the through line, at least what I'm gathering from your, 82 years old and here, experience on this planet with sincere, earnest, studying and teaching. That's comes out to that, right? Trust the know that the mystery of this universe is way grander than we could ever imagine. And then have the humility to know that, and then also have um, the sincere effort to just keep showing up and trusting that your life is going to turn out great. And it is great. So that's kind of what I'm getting.
Yeah. You mentioned two really important words earlier, faith and now trust. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of trust and faith, where there's nothing else to fall back on really. And that, trusting and faithing has led me to experiences where I've had knowing, like I know. It's not trust and faith anymore. It's knowing. And that knowing came from experience that I can't deny. And back in trust and faith, it could have looked impossible or mystical or, woo or something. But I have a knowing. But I'm not always in the knowing. In fact, most of the time I'm not, but I'll never forget I've been there and it's real. And when I'm not there, I rely on trust and faith.
Here's interpreting what you're saying. For a lot of people, oh, look at this baby, and so joyous, but they're joyous because they don't know anything. Whereas I've lived 82 years of your life, have gone through the ups and downs, and you choose to be joyous. This is a choice, right? This is much more tested, so hence the knowing, like, I don't know, I don't have the evidence, but I've gone through this enough times. I know, right? This is more tested, this is more resilient, it's more anti-fragile than somebody who just has no idea and ignorant and just like, oh, life is a moving great. Yes. And, that's kind of what I'm gathering from what you're sharing. Is that an accurate report?
Yeah. Accurate or not complete, but yes. I choose to be happy. I choose to be joyful. I choose to have a positive take on things. And it's constant, like in athletics, they talk about reps. Like I'm a big fan of college football, University of Oregon sports. I used to travel with their basketball team, and I maintain the interest. And daily, the Oregon football team is now rated #1 in the country. And back when I was in Eugene, Oregon, they were really mediocre. So I watched them rise to #1. And that's, I pay attention because how did that happen? Who are the leaders that have brought them to this level? And the athletic director, the coaches, they're brilliant teachers. They're really doing a good job and they're at the top. And I'm looking out like, what are they doing that they're so good at what they're doing? I want to, they know something I don't know yet. They talk about reps, repetition, like you repeat, like they like the quarterback learns a move. There's a certain a 5-step drop or a 3-step drop before you throw. They practice that, which way they face, and they repeat it until it goes unconscious. And then it becomes a habit. They don't think about it. That's the way I choose happiness is pretty much that way now. Because in the beginning, I had to consciously say, do I want this or that? And I still do, but mostly it's unconscious. It just happens. Now, so for example, we just had these elections and the country's very polarized and wrong making, right making. They're pointing fingers and chastising. I mean, it's gotten bad. And though Trump's elected and half the population thinks the world came to an end, the other half of the population thinks there's major hope right now. There's going to be positive change. Well, which one's right? Depends on which one you choose to look at. All right is consistent with my belief. So which belief do I want? Do I want the dystopic belief or choice, or do I want the utopic choice? Well, I'd rather take the positive one. Why? I do better that way. Is it the right choice? I don't know. It's for me. It's what works. Which one's right? They're both valid. Everybody's got that opportunity. Well, a lot of them will say, yeah, but, okay, now they're going to defend their stance, their belief. They're right. But is that producing what you want? Both are available right now. And that's always that way. I'm basically a pacifist. I mean, I grew up in the Vietnam War era, and everybody around me didn't want to go fight, and I knew I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to go shoot a gun at somebody else. And and I get in a conversation with people over the years about this, and frequently they'll say, "Yeah, but what if someone showed up at your front door and was threatening to kill your children? Would you defend and fight back? What are you going to do in that case?" And my answer has always been the same. That won't happen to me. Yeah, but what if it did? It's not going to happen. Terry, it could happen. It's not going to happen. And it hasn't. Why not? It's not that I don't choose into that world. Literally. And now we can get more esoteric, but it's energy. Oh, it's literally, it's all energy. And when the teaching goes that direction and the learning. And literally, I mean, literally, it's, I played in a band in the 60s and there were 4 of us. And sometimes I'd tune our instruments. Like I played a banjo, we had 2 guitars and a bass. And so I'd tune my banjo and sometimes I'd sit at a piano, I'd hit a note and I'd match the string on my banjo. I'd put the banjo on a stand, pick up a guitar, and I'd go through the process again. Well, I get to the 3rd string, which is G. The 3rd string on the banjo is G. And I'd hit G on the piano and the banjo 4 feet away from me would sound. And the first time that happened, it freaked me out because there's nobody there but me. Who did that? Sympathetic vibration. It's very literal. Our thoughts are energetic. What we think, what we focus on, what we choose is a vibration. It's an energy and it goes out there. And anything else out there tuned to G is going to resonate in kind and reflect back to us. And so if I say, this is a disaster, I look out there, disaster resonates. And that becomes my reality, very literally. Now, the quantum physicist and what's his name? Come on. The medical research is even, epigenetics, the same thing. So, I mean, it's very literal. So, is someone going to come and threaten my children with a gun? No. Now, I could create it by becoming afraid of that possibility. This is very practical. I mean, I could talk forever, CK, but just to make it practical. My biggest client was a manufacturing company, international company, 64th largest company in the world. And I was doing leadership work with their senior people, probably ran a few hundred people, maybe 900 through a series of my leadership trainings. And they liked what I was doing and we're getting some results. And I'm talking to one of the senior managers one day and he said, "Do you ever do work with safety?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Well, one of our factories, we're having real safety problems. We've had a death. We're having injuries more frequently than should happen, major injuries. And we've brought in safety consultants and we've redesigned our assembly line and nothing's working. Do you ever work with that?" I said, "Not by that name, but I'll bet I could." But inside not knowing that, well, I don't know if I could or not, but I'll bet I could.
I love the word spot. You're just like, okay, let's go.
Let's see, well, then it can't be any worse than what you're experiencing already. So he takes me to the factory. I mean, it's this big, this is in Brazil, this particular one. And it's this big, beautiful campus. It's all fenced and we have to go through a guard gate in. And so it's landscaped. It's really a pretty setting. And we drive through and the first sign I see, there's a small sign at the guard gate, the name of the company, but another 30 yards down the way is a big billboard, like you see on the side of a highway, great big billboard. And it said, X days since our last accident. And the X is these little cards. Every day they increase the number. So it could say 20 days. Tomorrow they put one. Well, two. We got that far. We hadn't even seen the big sign for the name of the business yet. We got that far and I said, I see your problem. And he said, well, you haven't even seen the factory yet. And I said, I don't need to see the factory. I see the problem. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, let's go look at the factory and then I'll tell you. So we go through the factory. He shows me some things. And I look around and I know nothing about the equipment or the manufacturing process. It's impressive, and engineering and all this. And so I started working with him, and it's simple. The way I say it is where you look is where you go. What you focus on creates what you call reality.
Yeah.
So all I did was change that sign. I worked with him. It took a few days, working with him to change the focus. Instead of focusing on accidents, switch the focus to what's the ideal end result you want. And we came up with a phrase. We put that on the sign. I showed him some techniques for visualizing and focusing, some practices to get rid of that fear focus. And it worked. It's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years since I've heard from him, but a couple of years later, no accidents. Well, so it's spiritual teaching, but it's very practical.
Terry, I can speak for you for hours. I don't know if you feel that way as well, but the thing that you speak about and your experience, I would love to do a part 2 with you another time if you don't mind, and totally go deeper into this whole idea of spirituality and energy. Let me just take a moment to really acknowledge you, Terry. I really appreciate, one, your willingness to having a long conversation with me. At 82 years old, I think a lot of the elders, they're pretty happy with whatever they got and like, youngster, I don't really want to talk to you. So I appreciate, number one, your willingness to talk. And number two, I really just appreciate the just decades of the work and the sincerity that you bring to really make a positive impact to everyone that you meet, and, I hope my listeners would totally get that as well, just by listening to the depth of your transmission. So thank you so much for the way you show up on Noble Warrior.
Yeah, well, thank you. No, I'm happy to do part 2 or whatever, and I enjoyed talking to you. You one of the things I don't want to see what I've learned. Legacy's not a big thing to me, but I want to see the work continue. And the work is you're onto it. You got the essence of it. A big part of the work I want to see continue is the experiential learning part of it, because this 2-dimensional screen is starting to replace that, and I think it falls short.
I agree.
And so maybe we could explore that. Like, how could I support you or anybody else doing what I call the work to keep it experiential?
I agree. 1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%. Terry, big hugs, great respect. Thank you so much for being a Noble Warrior. We'll continue our conversation.
Thank you, CK. Yeah. Your court. I'm happy to support you any way I can.
Appreciate you. All right. Enjoy your weekend. Take care now.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.